Thank you for tuning into the Three Circles Living podcast, where you can learn how to improve your life. And it doesn't matter if you want to accelerate your professional career, if you want to have better relationships in all areas of your life, if you want to be healthier or find fulfillment and purpose, this is the right podcast for you. And make sure to share it. Leave a comment with something that you found most valuable because it helps us and gives us feedback, and we appreciate that.
And it helps us help you, right? Because you
Yes.
know what, you probably don't care about helping us, and you don't have to, but it does help us help you.
Exactly. Thank you for clarifying that.
Of course, yeah, sure.
And today we're gonna round up the interpersonal relationships and the communication gaps and all the different roles that they play. But today we're gonna talk about the assumption trap. And I'm smiling because I assume a lot, and maybe you you will find out that you do that too, as we're talking about this today. Um, maybe you probably had some relationships where there was this tension and you just assumed like what the other person was saying, what they were feeling, what they were wanting from you, and it was not really the same thing. You weren't aligned. And it led to frustration and misunderstandings, and maybe you even distanced yourself from that person or that relationship. And we really want to shed some light on this, break this down, what this hidden communication gap is, and really what you can do about it.
Oh, this one. This is actually my favorite of five to talk
Yes.
about. And you know, you started, Chris, by talking about it from a real relational perspective. But this topic, it inhibits a lot of potential relationships from even happening. So
Mm,
this is, if I were to look at all five of them, they could all go to this one. All of them can go to this one. Um,
yeah.
so just a couple things kind of to kind of throw out here. First, assumptions are a lot of things. Everybody knows what an assumption is, right? But they're also judgments and
Mhm.
biases, stereotypes. And before you go, well, I don't have any of those. That's BS. Sure you
Yeah.
do. If I've done exercises, I do all kinds of exercises and you know over the years with my training groups. But if I give you a list of vocations and I say doctor or salesperson, and then I specify kinds of salespeople or psychiatrist or fisherman. I don't care. I can say anything, and you immediately you got a word picture. You got a whole idea about how you perceive this profession, and you can't help it. And that is probably the first most important thing. No one should ever say to you, "Don't make assumptions," because that's impossible. It's impossible to not make assumptions because it is literally how the supercomputer in your skull stores access to information. Right? Essentially, over your life, you see X and it begins to equal Y enough where you suddenly go from X to Y. You don't think about it, you just go from X to Y. And then Y takes you to Z. And you after a while, you don't even see X, you see Z because that's how your brains are. And that's how we store information, that's how we access things. And so it's really, really important to recognize that assumptions are natural. You're you're going to have them all the time, everywhere, about everything. You're going to have assumptions. The problem is not having assumptions. The problem is acting as if your assumptions are true. That is the ultimate problem. And actually, this isn't just about communication. This wouldn't just for communication if I was doing a broader broach to this topic because the assumptions you make about yourself, oh boy, I could let your hair on fire talking about this one because you have so many assumptions that aren't true that you make about yourself, but you act as if they are, which means you guarantee the outcome that you don't need to guarantee, but and prove your assumption true. So you're living in a whole circle of falseness. But that's a separate thing. You know, we want to connect it to interacting with people and you know, if you look at it, there's really two general ways that we make assumptions when it comes to other people. The first one, you're not going to like me saying it. but it's true. You make assumptions on someone's appearance. You do it. You do it all the time, and you'll say, "Oh no, I don't. I'm beyond that." No, you're not. No, you're not. Now, again, do you test that assumption? Because the rule of thumb is not, again, not that you cannot avoid assuming. You cannot. What you can avoid is acting on it, and that's by testing it. So the assumption to actually make is that you're assuming. That's the assumption to make. I'm assuming. I'm assuming my point of view in this scenario is the way I'm approaching it when there's probably 20 points of view,
Mhm.
but I'm seeing it from this one way. So appearance is one, and then knowing what someone means is another. So, appearance, my favorite example of appearance, and I use this example in seminars all the time, is Julia Roberts in Pretty Women, right? In Pretty
Mm.
Woman,
Yes.
when she goes into the shop in Beverly Hills and
Mhm.
she's dressed the way she dressed before she shopped there because Richard Gere, bought her all the stuff, right? And they treated her horribly because they judged her on appearance, right? And then she goes back the next day, right, with all these bags, and he goes, "Remember me?" And she's dressed to the nines, and she looks spectacular, and she's like, "Mistake, big mistake," right? Because they assume, and we all do it because it's the nature of it. And it could be whatever your prejudices are, whatever your biases are, whatever your stereotypes are. And some of those you didn't put in your own head. They got stuck in your head as a young person based on the environment you were in. And then they just became platforms for you. And you didn't even think about it. It's just how you operated. And wow, what especially in today's world, right? You can't judge somebody by how they look because what you don't understand, besides all the stuff that you don't understand about another person's, you don't know what they value. Some people don't care what they look like. They don't wake up in the morning and worry about looking good so you're impressed. I mean, think about how much. Oh man, I'm in a rabbit hole. So yeah,
Go
I'm
ahead.
just going. Think of how much money is wasted in our culture by people trying to impress people who don't give a crap about them. For what? For what? I mean, what a waste of life that is, and resources. Go give those resources to someone that needs them, because you don't need to use them in that way. Because people aren't thinking about you anyway. They're thinking about themselves. They're not wasting time thinking about you. Even
Mhm.
if you look like spectacular, they'll notice that for 5 seconds, but that's gone after that. Right? And now now the next time you see it, if you don't look spectacular, they're like, "What the heck's wrong with you? What's going on, Chris?" Because you don't look spectacular. You cannot judge. Most of the people that I hang out with are authentic people. As a matter of fact, it's a deep value of mine. If you're not authentic, you're not in my space. I just can't be in your space.
Yeah.
Um, but I know a lot of people who've accomplished a lot of things, or they're very wealthier, but you would never know it to see them. You would never know it, right? Because they don't care about the latest brand. They don't care about driving the fanciest car, right? They're just doing their thing,
Mhm.
and they're not out to impress you, right? They're too busy making an impact to worry about impressing you, right? That's just fact. So appearance, we can set that aside, but we know we do it. And so the first thing we need to do is as soon as we feel it, as soon as we feel ourselves going down the, oh, that person's whatever your label is, you just got to go, stop it, right? You got to
Mhm.
smack your own self in the face and go, stop it. You don't know the first thing, right? And you don't know what their walk has been. You don't know what they've been through. And I can promise you this, and this is one assumption you can make, and it's very accurate. There isn't a single soul you could run across in your life that can't teach you something you need to learn. Not one. Not one. So anyway, that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you just opened up this. I just
It's
you're
fun.
gonna get it. You're
And
just
I,
gonna
I
get
love,
it.
no, I loved it because you also, first of all, I love the example with Pretty Woman. Like that's one of my favorite scenes ever. So,
Mhm.
and smack in their faces, yes. But I also love like what you said, like it's one thing like when you want to break a habit, right? Some people have that band on their wrist, and they like smack themselves, right? When they see it, when they become aware of it, it's like, yeah, do that. Like, don't slap your face in public because that might look a little weird. I mean, if you don't care, you don't care. That's
Someone
fine.
will assume something
Yeah.
about you.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, have something to break that habit, to stop yourself in that and what is the word for support that muscle of awareness that you what you said. Like I love that. Like smack yourself somehow so that you're aware that there is a story. Like you cannot assume anything because that is the biggest thing. Like if we make up our own story and then sit with that and never get clarity on what's actually happening.
Yeah, think about all the missed opportunity to connect and
Yeah.
you know and learn that people miss because they live in their stereotypes. They just live in them. And
Mhm.
it's just here's the stereotype you need to know. Everybody's different. So stereotypes don't apply because everybody's different. I don't care what their skin color is. I don't care what their social standing is. I don't care. I don't care about any of that stuff. I will look to see if someone's a good person. If I see someone purposely do something hurtful to somebody else, I'm gonna live with that assumption. I mean, especially if I know the whole picture. Now I might wonder what would make that happen. But that's a separate topic. The other and the primary area here, although appearance does matter and it does affect an interaction, no question.
Mhm.
Especially, I mean, I should say especially, it can come from any direction, right? If you think you're better than someone else because of their appearance, well, you have some serious looking in the mirror to do. And if you think you're not as good as someone else because of their appearance, then you have some work to do because nobody's better than anybody else. That's just fact, right? We all got warts and we all got a couple good things we like. That's the nature of being a human being. But knowing what another person means is really where this comes into play the most often. Yeah, it can be mixed with the appearance thing or even the way someone talks, right? So, from a cultural thing or a vocabulary thing, right? You can judge that. I'll put that all in the appearance, right? Because that's judging based on a very surfacey
Mhm.
thing, and you don't want to judge anything on the surface. But knowing what someone means is the biggest area of miscommunication, which communication is miscommunication is 90% of the stress in your life, typically. Um, I understand there's big stressors, but on day to day, it's miscommunication. That's the number one thing that's an issue. And Chris, I'm going to give you an example of something. If I said to you, I looked in the water and I couldn't see the bottom,
Mm,
why? What's the first thing you think of?
because it's dirty.
It's dirty. All right. So that's one possible thing, right? But the point is, that's the picture in your mind. And so if we're in a conversation, I looked in the water and I couldn't see the bottom, and your word picture is that it's dirty. That's that's where you're going to operate in this conversation. The whole context of the conversation, however, whatever it's going to be around this water, your context is going to be it's dirty water.
Hmm.
But that's only one reason why it might. Maybe the sun is really bright and there's too much glare, or maybe it's really deep, right?
Hmm.
Or maybe it's really rough. Or I mean, I've gotten, I don't know, maybe 10 different answers to this, and when
Yeah.
I've thrown this out in a group, right? And you can use anything for this kind of example, but it's a classic example that going all the way back to the description of what the communication gap is. It's the difference between what someone says and what you think they said, right? That is the beginning of the gap. And if I say I looked in the water and I couldn't see the bottom, and so then I went and did blah blah blah, right? Or and then I dove in, your first thought is, what? Why would you dive
Yeah.
into that, right? Because you're thinking it's
Yeah.
it's it's dirty. Why would you dive into that? or it's dirty. You don't even know if it's deep enough, right? So there's all kinds of things that can, but that's because your lens is without clarifying and saying, well, what do you mean you couldn't see the bottom? What do you mean by that? Now, that one simple, which is my favorite clarifier, it's the ultimate clarifier. You have to be conscious of the tonality in which you say it, depending on the circumstance and the situation, because it can be an accusatory statement
Mhm.
as well with the wrong intonation. But to say, well, what do you mean by that? Or to soften it by saying, you don't need to soften this one because it's not an emotionally charged statement. I looked in the water and I couldn't see the bottom. Um, what do you mean by that? And then I can say, well, it was so deep, there's no way I could see the bottom. And you're like, okay, so now you understand exactly what I'm talking about in the context, as opposed to following the conversation and you automatically have a hole in the discussion. You have a hole in your understanding. So anywhere I go from that is built on a faulty foundation because there's a brick missing in the wall of the foundation of this conversation just because it's not my responsibility as the person talking to
Yes.
make sure you understand everything I say. It's your responsibility to clarify. And that is the number one golden rule in eliminating all of the gap is clarifying. That's probably way more than you wanted. Opened your mouth to start this.
No, I love that. Like so many things because these assumptions, like you said earlier, like it depends on what my lens is, my perspective, my experiences. Maybe I don't like water and all I think about is fear and I'm scared of water and so I'm associating that with this um, without really clarifying it or understanding the context of it. There's I probably also stop listening now because let's say I'm scared of water. All I think about now is water and like if I'm drowning and like have these other stories and don't even understand anymore what you said and what you're going on about, and I might miss important things.
Really, really, really great point. And you brought up other in kind of noodling a little bit about this particular conversation. There's also a lot of assumptions made that, and I'd like you to explore this one for a minute. There's
Okay.
assumptions that we make that someone knows what we need or what we want, or
Mm.
right. Talk about that a little bit.
Uh, yeah, well, I make those all the time, um, for many different reasons. Based on my experiences and things like um, I make assumptions for my family all the time, be it my kids or my husband, based from my point of view of what they need or should do or in whatever situation. But again, you have to clarify and also like to turn it around too and give some an additional context on making assumptions for somebody else. I have that cultural aspect with me, you know. So a lot of people make assumptions about that, and I actually come with a warning label because I learned it. Like I always say I'm German, and when I say things, they might sound a little direct or rude. I promise you, I'm not. I'm not trying to be. Just call me out on it. Like you need to call me out on it because it doesn't register with me. And there are many times when, I talk to people and they're like, "Why are you yelling at me?" And I'm like, "I'm talking normal. Like, what are you talking about? I'm just translating how I would do it in German with the tonality and how I say things, So um it goes both ways. And sorry that I distracted a little bit, but I also want to know, I want to make sure that people think about that aspect, especially when they're in a professional setting, if they're working with different nationalities. Like there's a lot, and some nationalities might not take you up on that and ask for the clarification. So you might have to give the clarifier of how you mean things.
Well, and there's that's a golden nugget you just dropped, and it's definitely applicable in the workplace, but it's so applicable in your home life. It's really applicable everywhere. You can't hold other people accountable for something they don't know.
Yeah.
And if you are aware of the potential for miscommunication, then take responsibility for trying to smooth that way. How often, you know, it took my wife a lot of years to understand that, I'm blessed with the anxiety and a tendency towards a little depression, as I wake up like Eeyore, right? And a lot of times. And I've managed that, never medicated. I managed it through lifestyle and the right things. And most people don't even know it's a thing, except that I talk about it. But for so many years, she thought she did something wrong.
Hmm.
She did something wrong, right? She assumed she did something wrong. And it would create angst among us. But really, it was on me because I hadn't gotten mature enough to admit that that was an issue that I struggled with. And so rather than openly say, hon, coming across, I might be coming across, like there's something wrong between us today, but it's not that. I'm just not having a great start to the day kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
Another, the home is such a great place for these conversations. And in general, the home is the best place to practice because you shouldn't export something that doesn't work at home. Your
Yeah.
best place to learn how to be communicative in the right ways with people that you're the least likely to try to do your best with, which is ironic with home, but
Yes.
you're safe. You're so safe. You take it for granted.
Yeah.
Um, but you think about just like roles in the household. This bleeds a little bit over into productivity, but so many roles in the household, like things that are taken care of, are assumed. Nobody talks about it. They don't talk about it. They don't say, how about you take care of this and I'll take care of that? They just get all pissed off because nobody did this or nobody did that. But there's no discussion, right? It's like, how can you have assumption and expectation of something that's not discussed? And again, we take this everywhere and we don't have enough time, but
I know.
there's so much.
There,
This is such an important thing.
yeah, there's so much. And I want to come back because I want to give another example that happened just recently because birthdays. Like if you're in a relationship, you have certain expectations that you want happening on your birthday, or you want a gift or whatever else, right? Just FYI, little nugget, your partner doesn't know unless you tell them what you want. Like because they have a certain way of how they want to experience their birthday or what it's important to them. So I specifically gave my husband, when it was my birthday, I a list of things what I want. And he didn't like any of it. He would have not done any of it because it was all experience. There was no gift. I just wanted experiences, and he's not that type, but he did it because he knew it. So if you feel like your partner is not um getting it, maybe you should just tell them, you know, it works. It helps at least. And then
And
if they don't do it, or if like then that's another story, but you need to
yeah,
say something.
but it makes no sense to get upset with someone because you didn't tell them.
Yeah.
Now you're assuming that they're a mind reader. You're not a mind reader. How can they be a mind reader? Right? That's not a thing. Um, you might think you're a mind reader because you make an assumption. Right? You do it all the time in conversations. Assume you know what someone's going to say next. Usually you're wrong. And when you do that, by the way, anytime this is a oh my gosh, I'm not off the rails, but this is a different thing. Anytime you interrupt someone
Mm,
and say what you think that they were going to say, you have just done a double smash to the rapport with that human being. Because one, you interrupted them, which is like saying, I don't really give a crap what you got to say. What I got to say is way more important. And then the second thing you'll do is prove you didn't know what the heck was going on because you say the wrong thing. Just listen.
yeah.
That's for another day, which we're not going to visit listening next. We're going to move into some business and financial stuff next. But
Yes, we will.
yeah, I know we're wrapping up. The last thing I just want to say on this, Chris, unless there's something else you want to talk about, is you're going to make assumptions. They are they are the mother of so many miscommunications, and you're going to make them. So just this simple thing. And if you wrote this down and looked at it every morning, it would help you. Test all assumptions. Test all assumptions. And
Yes.
that way, you never have to worry about something going haywire because of an assumption. Just test them.
Yes.
It's so easy. So easy.
I love that. And just to summarize, pretty much like ask yourself if you're in the middle of it, like what story are you telling yourself right now? What is your assumption, like you said? And then clarify, like, here's what I heard. Is that right? Did I get it right? Did I assume it right? Is that what you meant? Any of those, right? Because probably 8 times out of 10, it's not about you. It's not what you heard or what you thought. It's something else, especially when it comes to relationships too. So ask for what you need for what you heard and clarification instead of just assuming. And a little exercise for you all to do is journal about like a recent conflict that you had where you assumed something and see if in hindsight your assumption was right. Was it true or not? What was the difference? And then just really check in with yourself.
Hmm. That's good, Chris. That's really, really good. That's a great takeaway. Thanks for
Awesome.
that one.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you for everybody for listening. Thank you everybody for listening. Looking forward to next week. I know we're off a different topic, but also very important. And you guys want to tune in.
Yeah. Tune in. Spread the word. All right.
Awesome.
Ciao, man.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.